UFC Vegas 18. We got number 5 ranked Alistair Overeem facing off against number 6 ranked Alexandre Volkov in the heavyweight division, man. We got a stacked card on our hands. You know, fights have been dropping, fights been getting added on, but we got some good stuff nonetheless. Let me introduce my co-host, AJ. How you living, bro?
Man, I'm living well, Derek. It's a beautiful day out here in California. How you living, bro?
I'm living good, man. I'm excited for these fights. It's been 2 weeks without fights. I've had enough. I'm ready to rock. I've been having to supplement watching some Glory and watching some, you know what I mean, some LFA bouts and stuff like that. I've been having to supplement a little bit, but here we are. We're ready to go, man. So, listen, man. Folks, if you don't know, we're doing a recap kind of newswire type show, so you can go check us out at YouTube, basically where you find this show at. We just got another episode a week dropping out, so that way we're not handling too much recap here. You can find all that good stuff on the other episode. The link will be in the show notes below, but just for clarity's sake, let's go over our records, man. So since there haven't been any fights, it's still the same records. I'm sitting at 7-10-0, while AJ is at 8-9-0. So we right there, neck and neck. A lot can change after this weekend. So let's get into it, man. AJ, if you don't mind, you want to start out with your first sleeper for UFC Vegas 18.
I would love to, Derek. Thank you so much, man. My first sleeper for UFC Vegas 18 is Timur Valiev versus Martin Day. Now, this match is going to be a banger, all right? You better tune in because Valiev, he's coming off a KO, a TKO loss that was changed due to his opponent popping for that marijuana. But the fact still remains that he was finished. So you know he's going to come out with a chip on his shoulder because he was winning that fight the entire time. And then literally round 2, he just got caught. And that's how the fight game goes. Now, Martin Day, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. So you know that he's feeling that heat of the Dana White chopping block, which we've seen 3 pretty predominant fighters just get cut the other day. So I'm excited for this fight because both these dudes are going to come out swinging for the fences. Very technical striking and very fast paced. It's going to be one hell of an exciting match. What you got for yours, Derek?
Right on, man. So I got a familiar name. So I got Carol Hossa facing off against Jocelyn Edwards. And the reason this is a sleeper to me is because, first off, Hossa, she's taking this fight on short notice. She was supposed to fight a ranked fighter in number 15th ranked Nico Montano, but she actually failed a medical. Like, she didn't get passed for a medical because she got into a car accident. There was, like, neurological stuff. So she's fighting Jocelyn Edwards. So listen, man, Hossa, 6 finishes in 16 bouts. That's 38% knockout clip or finish clip. She's won 4 of her last 5. She has very crisp boxing, man. Her striking is impeccable. Her kicks, her arsenal of kicks are incredible. And she landed a combined 291 significant strikes in her only 2 UFC fights, dude. That's 9.7 strikes per minute. That's a pace. Now, Jocelyn Edwards, she had a very impressive UFC debut against Wu Yanan, who was a UFC vet with an 11-3 record at the time, man. She has 8 finishes in 12 bouts. She got real deal power in both of those hands, which she uses to pressure her opponents very effectively. And last but not least, she got those crispy calf kicks everybody is talking about right now. So this is going to be a banger. This is going to be a legitimate banger. Tune in for this one. What you got next, AJ?
Next up, Derek, I got another familiar name that we talked about before, Mike Slow Rodriguez versus Danilo Marquez. Now, Mike Rodriguez, he's coming off of that kind of sort of controversial loss against Ed Herman where he went 1-1 in the same fight, basically. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch because it's one hell of a stomach knee. Now, he's a very amazing front kicks and very sneaky elbows, which makes Slow a very dangerous fighter. Now, Danilo Marquez, he's coming off of a hot streak, and he's really looking to add another big name to his list to really certify him as an actual contender. Now, I'm expecting Rodriguez to come out with a chip on his shoulder, especially losing the fight like he did. And I'm also expecting Marquez to come and prove something. And I think this fight right here is specifically going to be a sleeper because of that. Slow needs to certify his position and actually get a dominant win, while as Marquez really needs to show that he's up there with the top upper echelon of the fighters looking to compete in the UFC. What do you think, Derek? What's your third?
All right, man. So this is my second sleeper. So this sleeper right here, man, this is going to be a new category that I just developed, and it's going to be called the don't blink, bout of the week. And what that means is keep your eyes open, man. Someone going to sleep. So I got, this is taking place at 160-pound catch weight, but these are some lightweights, and Devontae Smith facing off against Justin James. And listen, the first thing you need to know is this is a short notice fight, man. I love the short notice fights, a little less preparation, go in there swinging and banging, man. Alex De Silva was the original opponent for for Devontae Smith, but he had a knee injury, so he's out of there. But Justin James, he's no stranger to short notice fights, man. He won his UFC debut against Frank the Crank Camacho via first round TKO in 41 seconds on less than a week's notice. So this is nothing to him, man. Now, what's interesting about this bout is that both of these dudes are knockout artists. Devontae Smith, he actually tore his Achilles in his last bout against Kama Worthy, where he was a surprise knockout, and everyone was rooting for Smith on that one. He got slept. So he's going to come out hungry, says he's 110% for this bout, so we'll see. But he did have to relearn how to walk. I do have to point that out there. Ultimately, this is a sleeper because Smith has won 4 of his last 5 within the first round. He had 9 of his 10 wins are via knockout, and he uses in and out footwork to just set up a devastating 1-2 combo, put anybody in the UFC out. Justin James, 14 finishes in 22 bouts. His last 5 wins have all been finishes within the first round, and the entire game plan is to close the distance and wink some hooks at you. Don't blink. This one's going to be a banger. What's your last sleeper, AJ?
Thank you for catching that last one, Derek. For my last sleeper, man, it's Alexandre Pantoja versus Manel Kape. Now, I only got a very little to say on this because it's a main card fight, excuse me. So we'll break it down a little bit later. But for this one, all I got is pace and tenacity, okay? Pantoja, he will continuously look for a submission and is more than happy to stand up and bang it out. Now, Kape, this is UFC debut. He's got no Nikes on the feet. And Michael Chandler already proved that anything's possible. So I think these two are seriously going to put on quite a show. And I'm excited to see what these lightweight guys can put up to the match. What you got for your third, Derek?
Right on. So my last sleeper is going to be number 10 ranked Diego Ferreira facing off against number 13th ranked Beneil Dariush at lightweight, most stacked division in the UFC. And this is a sleeper because this is a rematch. These two fought back in 2014, and Dariush won a very decisive decision win. But it's just kind of like that Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier rematch where it's been so long. It's been 7 years since the first fight. We got to look at this as basically a brand new fight. Both fighters have grown so much in the last 7 years. And listen, this is just only thing I got to say to set it up. 10 finishes in 19 fights for Ferreira, 13 finishes in 24 bouts for Dariush. Tune in, man. This is going to be a banger, and this is going to set up who's going to move a little bit further up the ranks in the top 10. Dariush, he's number 13, but, in that category for the lightweight division. So it looks like that's it, man. Let's get into the actual main card, you know what I mean? And we're going to start off today with, folks, I just want to give this out there really quickly. Right now, as we're recording this, the UFC just had a cancellation for one of their bouts. It got rescheduled. This was Marion Renault versus Macy Chiasson, and that got moved over to February 27th because Renault, she actually tested positive for COVID. So we don't know if it's going to add another bout into the main card or if it's going to just be removed to 5 and keep it at that. We're going to proceed as if it's just 5 bouts on the card. So the first one is the one that I just talked about, right? Diego Ferreira facing off against Beneil Dariush, man. So let me get straight into it. I said it was a rematch already. You already know this, man. But listen, Ferreira had trouble with the southpaw stance, right, when he fought Dariush the first time. Now, he walks his opponents down in this kind of like modified Muay Thai switch stance where he's constantly popping his knee up, trying to, it serves both to check leg kicks, but also to disrupt the timing of his opponents, anyone who's in front of him. Now, the question comes down to this. Both of these opponents, Dariush and Ferreira, they thrive on walking their opponents down. This is like a couple of other bouts that we've talked about before. Now, my question to you, AJ, is who leads the dance in this one? But most importantly, not just who, but why do they lead the dance? Both of them are capable of doing it. Who leads it this time around?
Yeah, that's a great question, Derek. And I think it actually comes down because, like you said, they had a rematch already. And Dariush had a very dominant performance. So I think Dariush is going to come out hot and heavy, kind of try to lead that dance. But like you said, against that Showtime fight where Diego Ferreira kept lifting that leg up, it's interesting because will that threat of the strike or will that threat of the check? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but Dariush doesn't throw too many low leg kicks. He's more pressure, grind you down in the face, kind of get in your zone.
He'll throw him out there. He'll throw him out there from time to time. I do got to point that out there. He does have that calf kick in his arsenal. But, yes, he is more of a, swing and bang slickster boxer.
Exactly. So I'm thinking Dariush is going to come out hot and heavy trying to lead the dance a little bit. And if Diego Ferreira can actually hurt him, then we're going to see something interesting go from there on. What do you think?
Well, I think that Ferreira, if you watch his last fights, last couple fights, he's a full-out pressure fighter. He's full-out, I'm walking you down, and I think he's going to have that chip on his shoulder, kind of like Dustin Poirier had where he says, listen, you ain't bullying me, bro. I'm going to take what you got, and I'm going to walk forward, and that kind of leads into my next question, though, is that, like I just mentioned, Dariush, he has that slickster boxing style where his hands are real low, and he's literally just using footwork and head movement to evade strikes. But one thing that I found out was really interesting is Ferreira, since they kind of know each other a little bit well. Ferreira had a lot of success when he just said, you know what, enough of the nonsense. I'm going to blitz forward with strikes. And Dariush did what? The same thing most people do out of an instinct. You walk in a straight line backwards with your chin high up in the air. You're just trying to kind of get away, right? But legitimately, he had a lot of success there. So I really wonder, because it's kind of like Cory Sandhagen does the same thing that Dariush does, but I wonder, both opponents, or do you think Ferreira can capitalize on that? That's the question. Do you think he can capitalize on the tiny bits of mistakes that these fighters are going to make? Because that's at the point where you've already fought somebody. I mean, it's not like there's something crazy, really new you're going to bring to the game. So do you think he can learn from his mistakes from the first time?
I think that's a very astute point you pointed out, Derek, because in Dariush's last fights against Drakkar Klose and Scott Holtzman, both, a second round finish and a first round finish, Dariush was hurt. Mm-hmm. He had to come back from those fights where he got tagged a little bit and then started to really put the pace, put the pressure, and actually get the finish. Now, Ferreira, like you said, he capitalized on those weaknesses in the first fight. And like you said before, we ain't kids anymore. Can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So he's going to come out and he knows exactly how to capitalize on those moments. And with Dariush almost kind of being exposed in his last two fights for, like you said, keeping his hands down and chin back as he's retreating instead of getting out of the way of the train tracks, he's stepping back. That's the one spot where I was actually noted down. And that's Ferreira's biggest chance to capitalize on the opportunity. Throw those 3, 4, 5 strike combos and actually get Dariush moving backwards and in an exposed position. If he can capitalize on that, it's going to be a fun match to watch. And I think it'll be a short night for him.
I think, honestly, man, I think Dariush isn't doing it intentionally. I don't think any fighter would do it intentionally. I think it's just an instinct, and that's kind of the part of the game is you take advantage of those opportunities, man. I do kind of want to point this out there, just a couple interesting stats for the lightweight division. Diego Ferreira, he's third in striking differential in the lightweight division, and Dariush is tied for 6th with Nate Diaz for the most finishes in the lightweight division with 8. And I believe Dariush, what is he? I think he is, 4 finish wins, in his last 5 fights, man. So he's been on a streak of a streak. Now it comes down to this. I think personally the striking edge is in Dariush's corner. I think that the submission edge in terms of straight offensive submissions go to Ferreira. Now, I think the top control aspect is pretty even though Dariush got the best of Ferreira in their first bout. Now my question to you is, how does this fight end and why?
That's a good one, Derek. And I think, like you said, Dariush has got the striking. Ferreira has the submission. They both kind of had that pressure because that's just who they are naturally. But I think this fight comes down to who has that dog in him. And I'm giving that advantage to Dariush. I think it's going to be fast, furious. Both people are going to get hurt, ending up with Dariush getting that KO win. Round 1, specifically because I think he's going to have that dog in him a little too much for Ferreira to handle. What do you think?
You know what, man? I'm going to go Dariush, and I can't tell you the round because I don't know the round quite yet, but I'm going with a knockout win. And the reason why is because Dariush's left hand is kind of like Conor McGregor-esque, man. It's a missile. Like in the lightweight division, people crumble when they get hit by that left hand. And it's kind of amazing to see. He's like, he's not the most in shape type of guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about like chiseled abs. Dariush isn't the most great physique like that. Oh man, but those looks are deceiving. He will put you down, man. So let's move on to the next one. Now, this next one, I'm going to preface, I don't have too much to say about this one. I'm kind of appalled that this fight is taking place at all in the first place, but let's talk about it. So this is the bantamweight division. We got number 13th ranked Cody Stamann facing off against UFC debuter Askar fighting out of LFA. He didn't win a championship and move over here to the UFC. He won some fights, you know what I mean, in LFA, and now he's here in the UFC. Now, listen, let me set the table. Askar, he's making his UFC debut on short notice after Andre Ewell was forced to withdraw due to a false positive COVID-19 result. Now, first, do you think the UFC made the right call by removing Ewell, or do you think they might be playing it a little bit too safe and potentially even hurting fighters by shelving them when they're ready to fight, kind of wasting that prime of their career? What do you think?
I mean, that's a tricky ride to line, or a line to ride, because one, you don't want fighters and everyone else at danger because we don't know exactly how severe, you can't really take that risk. But at the end of the day, it is a blood sport. We're getting in there and we're throwing hands, we're throwing feet, people getting kneed in the face. I'm sure a little COVID's okay. Now, I mean, do I think Askar deserved it? I don't know. That's a hard one to say. What do you think?
Well, I don't think Askar deserved this fight at this level. I think that like a UFC shot, sure. Against this dude, nah, I don't know. Now Askar, he has solid striking, man. You know, he has really good distance management and, you know, top control, but I need to see him fight some higher level opposition before I can truly form an opinion on how he will fare in the UFC. And this is absolutely no knock on him, you know what I mean? This was an opportunity of a lifetime. He just went for it, and I cannot blame the man whatsoever. But this is the thing, man. Cody Stamann, he's a cardio machine, dude. You know, like, this is a dude who loves to pressure his opponents, a dude who is a grinder, fighting out a Michigan top team. You know what I mean? Like, this dude has a lot of experience, and that basically moves me to like my big overall takeaway that I want to give you right here, AJ. The UFC, I feel like they just needed to fill a fight on this one. I truly feel like that's the reason why this is taking place. Now, if you look at their respective opposition, I did a little bit of math here. That's how, like, appalled I was at this. If you look at their respective opposition, Stamann absolutely blows Askar out of the water, which should be expected, right? But Askar has a competition record at the time he fought their opponent of 45-24, right? Now, that sounds pretty impressive. You're like, oh, solid, right? And even when I heard it, I was like, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe this dude has fought some people, right? Well, listen, in comparison to Cody Stamann's competition record at the time he fought them, which is 249-113. I think there's a little bit of a difference there, man. So, like I said, it's not a knock on Askar, but nonetheless, the UFC's matchmaking is just absolutely brutal. When you get to the big show, that is what it is. I don't even really have any questions for you on this one, AJ. I'm sorry, man. Like, this one, I feel like Stamann is going to win this one outright. I feel like when he's just recently fought the Aljamain Sterlings of the world, the Jimmy Riveras of the world, come on, bro, what are we talking about here? This is a real deal cat. This is a dude who's about to be in the top 10 of the bantamweight division, you know, with just another couple wins. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
I actually agree with you, Derek. I don't really see, and I think it's just more of a place card filler than anything, but a little bit to what you said about Cody Stamann. He is a cardio guy. He is, you know, like you said, he went with Jimmy Rivera, Brian Kelleher, Song Yadong, you know, Aljamain Sterling. He has all these great fighters on his resume, but a lot of, at least what I was watching, his biggest flaw is he does what we talk about all the time. He takes somebody down and then just holds him there. Yeah. Do you think that's going to be his path to victory against Askar, being able to take him down and hold him there, especially being that the judges seem to not really score the fight in favor of the guy who just holds people down? You know what I'm saying? What do you think?
Well, I think that this is going to be, he's going to not necessarily lay and pray, but I think he's going to get that top control and ground and pound finish. That's my prediction for this fight. And the reason why is because I think there could be a little bit of animosity here. Now, hear me out. I don't think these dudes know each other that well. But Askar, he won a decision over Derek Manel back in 2018. And I don't know if you know this, but Manel, he trains at Michigan top team along there with Cody Stamann. So he might have to get one back for his team. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's going to be a little bit of bad blood, especially because when he fought Brian Kelleher, Cody Stamann, that is, when he fought Kelleher, I believe his brother, something had just happened to his brother. It was a real emotional kind of family situation. And then he dropped the next one to Rivera. And I think now he's saying, I'm getting back on track. I've been in the UFC for a minute, man. This is my time to shine. He's already fought Aljamain Sterling, who is next in line for a title shot. Like, this dude has chops on him. And yeah, I gave my pick for a knockout win. What are your thoughts, AJ?
I'm going Stamann with decision just because I do think he's too much for Askar, but I don't think it's going to be too vicious of a victory for him. I think it's going to go to the judges.
Interesting. And the last thing I want to point on that, just because I just remembered right now, Cody Stamann is not any typical bantamweight. He's actually huge for the bantamweight class. Now, I don't know if you've seen Askar's frame. He's not the biggest bantamweight in the world, so it's something to take into consideration. Now, let's move on to the next one, man. So the next fight that we got lined up here is going to be number 5. It's your sleeper, number 5. And I'm going to show you how to pronounce it right here, AJ. I got you. Alexandre Pantoja. Number 5, Alexandre Pantoja facing off against Manel Kape at flyweight, and Manel Kape is making his flyweight debut. Now, set the table for us, AJ. What do you got on this one?
Now, like you said, Alexandre Pantoja, he's super aggressive even off his back. That's why I was a big fan of this guy. He's literally looking to tap you in any sort of position. The second either he gets the takedown or you take him down. No matter what, he's super dangerous. He's one of those new breeds of fighters that I've been talking about that's coming out of Brazil. And then they're fighting at AT&T, and they're super well prepared. If you watch his last fight against Askarov, I know it's confusing a little bit, but a different guy completely. Askarov was totally dominating the fight from a position standpoint. But if you really watch what was going on, Pantoja was rolling, controlling the grappling, and actually getting a lot of very dominant positions that just didn't look that dominant to a casual fan or even the judges. So he ended up losing the decision. But I personally think He won round 1. It was a close round 2. He lost round 3. So it could have been either way. But Pantoja, he's scary, especially for the 125-pound division because he's so long with a 68-inch reach. He's only 5'5", but he has a lot of very tricky, unorthodox ways in which he can tap you out. Now, Manel Kape, like I alluded to before, and like you said, this is his first UFC fight. He's fighting out of Rizin, and for a long time, he's not necessarily fighting the biggest fighters. He's not fighting the biggest names coming out of Rizin, so we don't really know exactly what's going to happen. And we were talking about this before pre-show. He was fighting in a league where Rizin doesn't have the unified rules. Mm-hmm. So against his fight against Kai Asakara and Takeo Mazugaki, he was literally kicking people with shoes on. And I don't know if you felt this, but I know back in karate when we were able to wear the wrestling shoes and whatever not, you get kicked with a dude wearing shoes and he points his toe, man, it hurts way more than getting kicked with a foot. Now you kick with the shin, it's kind of all cut, done, and kaput, but still, it's a huge advantage that Manel Kape was able to utilize in Rizin, whereas now he's going in there, no J's on his feet, kind of a brand new show, big names now, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that pressure. Now, he does pack up a lot of power into that small frame. It's just going to see if that power can transfer over from Japan to America, where we know these boys in the UFC like to eat.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really have any big questions for you, Derek, as far as where's the star power from this fight. I guess my biggest question is who has more to risk and why is anybody even interested in Manel Kape?
Oh, I mean, people are interested in Manel Kape because look at what he's doing in Rizin. Now, he's a big star over there. Dude's like, I think 15-4. He's kind of like running through people, starching people. And in that last fight, I believe it was, let me see what his name is. Kai. Yeah, there we go. So it was a rematch. That was a rematch. And so what's interesting about this, man, is Manel Kape, he has this explosive power that you really only see at 125 from like a Davison Figueiredo. That's what's interesting about him. That's why people are tuning in. It's because we already saw UFC was contemplating getting rid of the flyweight division. He's like, y'all are too technical and too boring. Nobody wants to pay to watch this, right? But then you get an overseas star like Manel Kape, a dude who is kind of padding up his record. Let's be honest here. You know what I mean? You're fighting dudes over there at Rizin, which is kind of so let me ask you this, because this was part of my first question. The similarities are there between these two fighters. Manel Kape's last win was it was by punches. It was a knockout win in a very similar modified pull counter right cross that Alexandre Pantoja landed on Wilson Reyes in his fight in 2019, man. It was like almost the identical strike. So the similarities are there, but do you respect the competition at Rizin as much as you do a Bellator or a One Championship or even an LFA or a Cage Warriors? I just want to kind of gauge that. Like, what is your level of respect for Rizin as opposed to these other leagues?
Rizin, any fighter coming out of Rizin's hard to respect just because we don't see much promotion.
Yeah.
We don't see many even fights on YouTube. You have to really go and look for them. And I know Rizin, you can actually get free fights. It's either Rizin or ONE FC, one of those two. But even to that point, I don't know which one. So that being right there, you already kind of tells you my interest level in that. Now, I think the biggest advantage or the biggest why people should be interested in Manel Kape is the same reason why he was brought over to the UFC. And, man, it's because he's a talker. Yeah. He's been in the media just telling everybody he's going to rip this dude's head off. He's done, all this stuff. Go and look at it. He's really bringing that hype train that you need to see in the 125 that only one other person is saying, and that's Davison Figueiredo. Everybody else in that division is basically a nice guy. And we saw how nice guys get passed over in a fight we'll talk about later in Cory Sandhagen. He gets that big win, doesn't call out the champ. All right, then somebody else fights him. Now, Manel Kape, he's a talker. He can actually get those big fights and make that draw to the 125 that isn't there. And I think that's his biggest advantage to him as a fighter.
I feel that, man. So listen, in my opinion, I believe that in terms of let's talk technical for a second. I believe Pantoja, he's at his best. He's kind of a slow starter, and I believe that he's at his best when he can kind of stand back at range, get a feel for the timing and for the movement and whatnot, and pick you apart with counters. I think that's the best version of Alexandre Pantoja. Now, there's another version of Pantoja Pantoja, who doesn't use his leg kicks or use that front kick to the body, kind of like a teep, doesn't use those things. And that's what I call dog Pantoja, you know what I mean? And that's the dude who disregards all the distance, all the measurements, all the composure, and just gets in an all-out firefight like he did with Davison Figueiredo when his counters weren't working. This dude his nickname is the Cannibal for a reason. Like, this dude goes to work, right? So my question to you is that if he has success, oftentimes he is sticking back, being composed, but when he's not having success, that's when he gets drawn into all that. Being that Kape is a talker, like you just alluded to, which version of Pantoja do you think shows up on Saturday night?
I think that, especially with Kape being a talker, a lot of the media hype being on him, and really a number 5 fighter fighting some dude who's coming in off of Ryzen. I mean, he was winning fights. I'm pretty sure he was the 125-pound champ in Ryzen, but still.
The 135-pound. He actually was going down weight, yeah.
Exactly. So even still, still a champ, still has a good name behind him. It's just not necessarily the level of competition that Pantoja is expecting or wanting, but that gives him a good aspect to make his name off of this dude coming in. Now, I don't know. What do you think?
So let me ask you this, man, because this is my big summary question for this, right? If Manel Kape wins this bout, I imagine he's thrust into the Michael Chandler position of the flyweight division, right? This is a former Ryzen bantamweight champion. He has a solid record at 15-4-0, and this dude finishes fights, right? With Pantoja ranked at number 5 right now, do you think Kape would be next in line for a title shot with a decisive win this weekend? Now, maybe Brandon Moreno is still number 1, but I guess number 2 next to Brandon Moreno.
Oh, he's definitely, if Kape gets it done and gets it done within the first, second round impressively, I would expect him to be either fighting Moreno or in that lineup, maybe even fighting Brandon Royval. Kind of those top 4 or 5 interesting area, like mix them up how we're having in the 155-pound division, where the champ necessarily isn't decided yet, and you kind of need to see what's going on there. Now he can get that finish. That's going to leave him up, especially fighting a number 5 fighter. And it's going to be interesting to see how he gets it done.
Well, we saw that the UFC absolutely does not care about the rankings, and if the fight sells, they'll put them in the title fight, which is why they're already trying to book Chandler for title fights and whatnot, even though everyone is disagreeing. So ultimately, man, who's your pick and why?
I'm going Pantoja with the submission win round 2. Who you got?
I'm going Manel Kape, and the reason why is because, like you're saying, man, another opportunity of a lifetime. You walking in, you're getting to fight number 5 out the gate, and he already says it. He says, I want the top dog in the UFC. That's who I'm coming for. I'm gonna break this dude's ribs. I'm not playing around. And listen, man, you got to back it up. If you're talking that talk like that, I'm excited to see how he performs not wearing a pair of J's or Nikes or whatever, man. I want to see this dude get down, so I'm going Manel Kape, and I'm gonna go, listen, man, you fighting the Cannibal. I think he's gonna bring the dog out. Give me a knockout win. There we go. I'm feeling bold today, man. So listen, let's move on to the co-main event, and this could be a main event all in and of itself, man. I'm really excited for this bout. So we got number 2 ranked Cory Sandhagen versus Frankie Edgar, ranked at number 4 in the bantamweight division, and this is ultimately a title eliminator. Maybe for one of the fighters more than the other, but nonetheless, this is pretty much a title eliminator, right? So first and foremost, man, Cory Sandhagen, this dude has elite distant management and head movement. I've talked about those a couple times tonight, but this dude has really elite versions of that. He's not quite a master yet, but he's damn near there. He's just about there, right? So, however, in his fight against Marlon Moraes, where he won with a second round spinning roundhouse knockout kick, beautiful. Listen, he did get caught quite a few times trying to close the distance. And when Moraes would blitz forward, he did the same thing that I was just talking about for, putting his chin back, head in the air, walking back in a straight line. The same exact thing that I just talked about for Beneil Dariush, right? So, do you think Frankie Edgar at this stage in the game, man, this is OG, big-time veteran Frankie Edgar, does he have enough pop on his shots to capitalize on those mistakes and to put, Cory Sandhagen out? I do want to just say the last part of this question is Frankie Edgar said it himself in his interview with on the Real Quick with Mike Swick podcast. He needs a finish if he expects another shot at the bantamweight title. What do you think?
I agree entirely. He does need a finish because Frankie Edgar, 39 years old. I mean, we've been talking about this dude for, I can't tell you how many years. He's been in the limelight for that many years, and he really likes, he's a very exciting fighter style where he likes to touch, move, and then get on the inside, take you down. He's very well-rounded and can do it in any sort of way. Now, does he have the pop to finish Sandhagen? The time will tell because, man, he is a very small guy at 5'6" and packs a lot of pressure. And we saw that Sandhagen, he can get touched up like he did in the Moraes fight, but he carries a pretty good chin.
Yeah.
So we'll see if Frankie Edgar can actually get that pop, get that knockout win. I don't necessarily know if now the old school Frankie Edgar has it though.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
No, I'm with you, man. And that's kind of like in the same boat that I'm in, is that it's like, listen, man, all right, let's play a game real quick. When's the last time, I don't want you to look at no notes or nothing. If you had to guess, when's the last time Frankie Edgar finished a fight in the UFC?
I'd probably say 3 or 4 fights, maybe even 2 years ago. Not looking at my notes.
You're close. 2017. It's 2017 versus Yair Rodriguez, where it wasn't a real finish. It was a doctor's stoppage, actually. But I believe he had a finish in the fight, 2 fights before that against Chad Mendez or something like that back in like 2016 or whatever. The point is, it's been a long time, man, since this man has gotten a finish. And like, no disrespect. I mean, listen, let's look at who Frankie Edgar has fought, man. Pedro Munoz, split decision win. Korean Zombie, lost. Max Holloway for the championship, lost. Cub Swanson, win. Brian Ortega, where he got uppercutted off of his feet in a knockout loss, which was pretty tough. So 2-3-0 in his last 5 with a 1 title fight. That is not bad for a 39-year-old, a dude who is, listen, fighting out of Ricardo Almeida's jiu-jitsu gym, man. You know what I'm saying? This 6 knockouts, 4 subs. Frankie Edgar, I just want to say this because I think he's being overlooked right now because he's old man Frankie Edgar. He has nothing to play around with. You mess around with this dude, you're going to be in a tough spot. And Frankie Edgar has seen everything there is to see. He's done everything there is to do. This is going to be a tough test for Cory Sandhagen regardless. So I hope he's not taking him lightly. But the next point that I have is I really believe that Frankie Edgar's best chance of winning this bout, like his true best chance, is taking the Aljamain Sterling approach. Not putting the backpack on him and just tapping him out in a minute, not that, but blitz him from the get-go, bell to bell, non-stop pressure, his back against the fence, his, not knowing kind of where to go and whatnot. And the reason why is because of Cory Sandhagen. What he's doing the entire time is he's standing back at distance, he's measuring. All right, where you are? Okay, I did that. You're going to, okay, all right, sounds good. And he's doing all of that, just taking all of these mental notes, kind of like a John Jones or a Floyd Mayweather, right? Taking all these notes, and he's a big proponent of the flow state. That's a big thing Cory Sandhagen talks about, right? So if his timing is disrupted and he can't get into the flow of his offense, that's taking away his main strength. So I really believe that is the best plan that Frankie Edgar could utilize, and the takedowns too, but you watch out because Cory Sandhagen has great submissions off of his back. But ultimately, like I said, the flow and all that is a big part of his offensive game. Now, I mean, what do you think, though? That's not really Frankie Edgar's game. Not necessarily. So, like, what do you think? Yeah.
Not necessarily. It's not necessarily his game, but fights are like they say, I forgot the exact term, but fights are based off of matchmaking. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like the skill of each fighter determines each. So no fight is the same. Frankie Edgar, that may not be his style, but it could be his style because he sees that against a tactician, the best way to defeat a tactician is just throw volume, throw heavy hits, make them get out of that flow state that you're talking about, so you don't end up like who's the fighter against Max Holloway where he was ducking and dodging. We just watched it.
Calvin Kattar.
Calvin Kattar, exactly. And Calvin Kattar is a good boxer and he knows how to get in there dirty, but you saw when you're in that state, nothing can touch you now except Frankie Edgar needs to get inside, get on the inside, do a little dirty boxing and disrupt that pace and that distance to actually make a difference on Cory Sandhagen. That's actually what I was writing down is he needs to get inside. Yeah. That's the biggest vantage point vantage point to winning that I see Frankie Edgar having is getting inside and using that old school dog mentality that he's been built in since he's been fighting to actually get the dub in instead of this nice guy touch you up a little bit Frankie Edgar that we've seen in the past. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
No, that's how I feel. Like I said, I think that I don't know if he'll be able to do it. You know what I mean? But I do think the dirty boxing is the key to winning this fight. The clinch work, trying to get a takedown. But like I said, you got to be really careful because Sandhagen will submit you. You know what I mean? Because right now, let's see. Sandhagen has 3 submissions. He's been submitted once. Frankie Edgar, 4 submissions, never been submitted. You know what I mean? So he's got great submission defense, but still, you got to be careful. Now, ultimately, with wins for Cory Sandhagen, with wins against Marlon Moraes, Rafael Assunção, John Lineker, Austin Arnett under his belt, what does a decisive win against Frankie Edgar do for his legacy in the modern generation of bantamweight fighters, man? That's a resume if I've seen one.
You're saying a win for Frankie Edgar?
No, a win for Cory Sandhagen, along with those other names that I just named. He already got those under his belt. So a win against Frankie Edgar, that's like you just took down a legend. That's like Uriah Hall beat Anderson Silva. Regardless of where he was at in his career, that's a legendary name on your record.
I don't necessarily think Cory Sandhagen gains much of anything from beating Frankie Edgar. He beats him, and everyone's like, yeah, you beat up a 30-year-old Frankie Edgar. You should have. Like, we know, bro, we know. now he has a lot to lose. I think Frankie Edgar has a lot more to gain from this fight. Now, that being said, Cory Sandhagen does have a lot to gain from the fact of beating a legend, an absolute legend, like I said, a dog in Frankie Edgar. But in the rankings and necessarily going forward in the future for prosperity and longevity in the fight game, I don't necessarily know that this adds anything to Sandhagen's name. I mean, you got Aljo fighting for the championship against Peter Yan, and then basically Cory Sandhagen and who after that. So he's just kind of waiting and kind of playing games, and that's, I think, why he's taking a big name fight and not necessarily what would be considered a hard fight, even though Frankie Edgar is number 4.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So, all right, let's get to it, man. Who's your pick and why?
I got Sandhagen by decision just because I think he's not going to be able to put away Frankie Edgar, and I don't know if Frankie can put him away either. So I think they're going to give it to, at the end of the day, Sandhagen by decision. Who you got?
I'm going Cory Sandhagen, and I'm going with a knockout. And the reason why is because in Frankie Edgar's last 3 losses, he has been finished in all 3 of those fights. So listen, man, it's the snowball effect. Momentum is a crazy thing, and when it's going good, it goes really great. But when it's going bad, it tends to go really, really bad for a lot of people. So that's my pick, man. So let's move on to the main event, man. Now this is the big boys, man. This is the big show. Number 5 ranked Alistair Overeem versus Alistair Overeem versus Alexandre Volkov, ranked number 6 at heavyweight, man. And listen, we got Drago versus the Demolition Man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure that when casual fans think of Alistair Overeem, they think of just this huge, hook that is just dropping people with his hands all day. But that's not really the reality of the situation. Overeem sets up a lot of his offense out of the tie clinch, using those beautiful knees, kneeing you to the body, using step-in knees to counter your shots. That's actually how he did the boa constrictor, Alexei Oleinik, man. He just brutalized him with knees the entire fights until he dropped him and then just closed the show, right? So being that Volkov is 6'7", right? Dude's an NBA player in the ring, right? And he uses his length and his distance pretty well when he fights. Do you think Overeem will have to walk forward and actually drop bombs to be effective in this fight? Can't really sit back and counter and do all that stuff when you got a dude who could touch you from miles away.
Halfway across the cage.
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily as much as he's going to need to push the pressure, push the fight, especially because them being heavyweights, one touch can knock anyone out. And we've seen that Alistair's chin isn't necessarily where it used to be. Now, I do think, since he's been fighting professionally since 1999, he's in the UFC since 2011. You look at young Alistair Overeem fighting in Japan, and he was that tall, long dude using that length. So he knows, and he's seen so many fighters in so many different distances that I don't think it's going to be anything new for him. Now, does he need to maintain that range? I think it's probably going to be good for him to actually get on the inside because, like you said, nobody wants to be taking jabs from halfway across the cage. But I do think Alistair Overeem has the technique and has the grit to get through all of that, whatever Volkov throws at him. What do you think?
Listen, man, I don't know. I think this is yet to be seen. It was something I've been spending a lot of time racking my brain on, man. And the way this fight could play out so many different ways. The fight that we saw from Alexandre Volkov in his last fight versus Walt Harris was not what I expected whatsoever. I believe I actually picked Harris to win that fight. And listen, Volkov put on an absolute clinic. And this was one fight removed from Curtis Blades taking him down like 20 times and just demolishing him on the ground. So Volkov, he put a clinic on against Harris, right? What surprised me is he used this really smart pressure, right? So it's like from the jump, it was absolutely clear. This dude was controlling the center of the cage. Harris's back was to the cage the whole entire time, but he wasn't necessarily like closing the distance and going crazy. He was just picking them apart at range, which is what you do when you have the physical tools, skill set that Volkov has. No, he's the John Jones of the heavyweight division. Nobody moves like him or looks like him or as tall as him or none of that stuff, right? Maybe not moves like him. I don't know. That might have been an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. So ultimately, man, if Volkov did that to Harris, who had a 77-inch reach, and Volkov has an 81-inch reach, do you think that he can pick apart Overeem and just leave him back against the cage and control the center of that cage against Overeem, who has an 80-inch reach? I mean, the similarities are there. It's not like it was that much of a difference. And Walt Harris is a monster. So what do you think?
I think Walt Harris is a monster, but a little bit more so that played into that fight was the experience.
Sure.
Walt Harris had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life. Not too many fights. He got thrown into a big name against Volkov and got kicked in the stomach. And like you get hit in the solar plexus, and man, it might take a second or two. But like you alluded to earlier, man, those knees of Overeem are absolutely devastating. Not only did it to the boa constrictor, but he took out Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt and a so many names with just those devastating knees, man, because you get hit in the stomach and it takes you a second or two to go down. Now, can he land those knees without accidentally landing a groin shot on Volkov because he's so tall? Who knows? And I don't know if he'll actually put it into work. But I do think that Volkov doesn't necessarily have the pressure or the skill set to actually make Alistair Overeem go on his back foot. Because Alistair Overeem's fought some serious dogs and some serious people who are looking to get in your face, and they don't mind trading. Whereas I don't think Volkov, and I'll say this right now, open and honestly, I have severely underestimated Volkov for his last 2, maybe even 3 fights. I picked Derek Lewis to win. He won that one barely. He squeaked that one out. He beat Greg Hardy. He lost to Curtis Blades. I've also picked Curtis Blades, but then he beat Walt Harris super bad. I mean, kicked to the solar plexus round 2, and I also picked Walt Harris to win. So I could, again, be underestimating Volkov. But I don't think that he necessarily has what it takes to put Overeem on his back foot. What do you think?
Well, I've been in the same boat. I'll be completely honest as well. Like I said, I picked against him for the I think it was the Curtis Blades and the Walt Harris fight. I just looked at it as this big lumbering dude who is like, he's all right? But he has all the tools to be great. He just hasn't put them together yet. But that last fight changed my mind, man. He got this whole back tattoo. He's like a new evolved version of himself. And I do think that he is taking that stuff into consideration, and he's really trying to like maximize on the momentum that he has right now. Dude's ranked number 6 in the heavyweight division. Like he was kind of saying, like there ain't too many names ahead of him until you get a title shot. You got Stipe, you got Francis, and then you got just Derek Lewis, a couple other names. It's not like it's the most it's not like lightweight where you got a million killers unranked just because that's how hard it is to move up that rankings. Now, listen, man, if this fight goes to the ground, who has the advantage? And before you answer that, Overeem hasn't registered. He has, I believe, 17 submission wins as opposed to Volkov's 2 submission wins, but Overeem has not registered a submission win since 2009 when he fought in Dream. Not even in the UFC. And Volkov hasn't registered a submission win since 2016 when he was fighting at M1 Global. So neither of these fighters have submission wins in the UFC. And this is another reason. I just want to point this out really quickly. Don't just look at fans, people watching, MMA fans, boxing fans, whatever. Don't just look at a record and think you know what there is to know off of that, man. Like, these records are so deceiving. You got to see what's the level of competition, how much these dudes are padding their records in the beginning of the careers. If you start your career with 10 submissions and you have 40 fights and then you don't have one since then, what does that really say about how great of a submission artist you are? Anyways, who has the advantage on the ground in this bout, AJ?
Now, like you said, who has the advantage on the ground? I don't necessarily know if these guys are both practitioners of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but submission-wise, I think Volkov does, just because he's long, lanky, and if you look at Alistair Overeem, his passion when he hits the ground is to put a hole in your face. Yep. He's not, and the only reason he hasn't choked anybody out or submitted anybody is because he's literally looking just to drop bombs while you're on the floor. Because it's a heavyweight division, man. One-touch KOs are left and right. So I give the submission and the technique to Volkov, but I'm going to go the ground and pound and tenacity for Alistair Overeem. But what my question to you, Derek, is both of these fighters have had their chins tested, and I personally think that's where the term I want to use, where the tide turns, basically. Mm-hmm. Will Overeem be able to touch Volkov's chin and put him down, or will Volkov be able to do the same, or which chin is going to hold up longer, and how do you think that plays into the fight, knowing that both of them have been knocked out very recently? I mean, Derek Lewis 3 fights ago dropped Volkov, and Jairzinho Rosenstrike 2 fights ago dropped Overeem. I mean, both, KOs.
So my argument here is that, listen, in the heavyweight division, it doesn't matter how tested your chin is, you will go to sleep. We get hit by one of them big boys. But the real thing, I guess, unless you're Stipe Miocic and you just got an unreal granite chin. But I think, and I'm going to go a physics answer on this one, Alistair Overeem is going to have to punch up at Alexander Volkov. And anytime, if you have any experience, if you ever sparred your buddies or whatever the case may be, punching up is way harder than punching down, or even punching, you know what I mean? Like, you lose so much leverage and power trying to punch up at somebody. So I think Volkov might be able to weather the storm, man. You know what I mean? And if he could hit him on the ends of his punches with that crazy long reach, I mean, he only has a 1-inch reach advantage. But like I said, the whole his frame is so completely different than Overeem's. I think I'm going to give Volkov the edge, especially because Alistair Overeem. Listen, they both have a lot of fights. Volkov has 40 fights. Overeem has like 60 fights. So it's not like a crazy difference. It's a ridiculous amount of fights either way. But listen, so that's what I got on that one. Now, let me ask you this. What would be, in your opinion, the most surprising end to this fight?
Most surprising win to this fight would be Volkov choking out Overeem round 1.
Well, that would be pretty surprising. I'd say either way, even if Overeem, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I agree. So listen, Alistair Overeem, he's won 4 of his last fights, via knockout, and he has noted this is his final run at the heavyweight championship. He says if he loses to Alexandre Volkov, it's basically done. You're retiring. That's it. Call it quits. He made this really. I don't know the word that I'm trying to use, but he used this really like weird standard for like, listen, I think fighters should be able to fight till age 42, but after 42, you should no longer fight anymore. It's like so arbitrary, that cutoff, like why 42? He's like, fighters after 42 aren't the same anymore. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the 42 is the cutoff. I think just once you get that old, you probably shouldn't be fighting, at least not UFC caliber competition. Just like in golf, man, you get old, you go play in the senior league. You're not playing against all the young bucks, man. So maybe we get a senior league for the UFC or something one of these days. But if he loses to Volkov due to a close decision, do you think that Alistair Overeem honors his word and steps away from the game?
If it's a close one, no. I think he'll stay in because he still has a shot to go for it because, like you said, there's only so many people in the top upper echelon of the heavyweight division because it severely drops off after 5 and 6. I mean, I don't have the rankings up right now, but I mean, I know when we were doing them on our own, it's the top is very, very stacked, and then it falters very hard. Now, I still think, let's say he doesn't get it done, and Volkov squeaks one out against Overeem. I do think Overeem still has a lot of fans behind him and a lot of the support behind the UFC just because he, poster-wise and media-wise, is a lot more of a presence than Volkov. Yeah. Let's see if that can change.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think that he honors his word, to be honest with you, man. I think the dude seems like he's at the end of his rope. And because if you lose to Volkov, man, you take a big step back, in terms of like getting that title shot again. You know what I mean? We said it. There's about 5, 6, 7, 8 names that are really, really solid in the heavyweight division. And, getting past those. Just look at how often the heavyweight crown is being put to test. It's so few and far in between. Miocic has been holding on to this thing for a solid minute. Cormier, he retires. And, once if Ngannou wins the championship, I don't know who's taking it away from that, man. So listen, man, let me get your pick and why.
Man, for me personally, I'm going with Overeem KO round 2. I think it's going to be a fun, exciting night for him. What do you got?
I'm going Alexandre Volkov decision win. Picking him apart at range, staying away from the big blow that puts either one of these guys away. And I think this will be a war, though. I think this will be one of those where it's a standard Alistair Overeem fight. You know what time it is, man. That's why he's the main event. That's why we're excited for this fight. So I guess last but not least, AJ, give me your fight of the night prediction.
Man, my fight of the night prediction, we're going back early in the night. I'm going Diego Ferreira versus Beneil Dariush, man. I think that's going to be a banger of a fight, especially being the grudge match that these two have. Who you got?
Well, listen, this is why we are over here doing this research, studying the tape, and doing all that, because I'm giving you my fight of the night prediction is for free on ESPN. You ain't even got to go and tune into the big card, man. I'm going Devontae Smith versus Justin James. Short notice fight. Justin James, he's generally good for about a round and a half before he starts gassing out. Devontae Smith had to relearn how to walk. He's coming out hungry, 110%, wants a knockout. I think that someone is going to sleep. I called it don't blink for a reason earlier, man. So once again, don't blink. Tune into that fight, man. So, folks, that's it. That's the picks. That's the sleepers. That's the fight of the night, the whole entire shebang, man. Please feel free to give us a like, subscribe to the channel. YouTube is the main hub in which we're putting all the All Factors Considered content out. Tune into our show, our recap and our news show when that drops next. Like I said, all that stuff in the links below and whatnot. But ultimately, man, just tune in on Saturday. Drop some comments below on who you think is going to win, who you think is going to lose, whatever in between draws. I don't care what it is. Tell your grandma about the show. Tell whoever, man. Spread the word. And ultimately, I will catch all of you and you too, AJ, on fight night when we're ready to swing some heavy leather around, man. So that's it. Until next time, folks. Peace. Wow, money. There we go.